I came home smelling like brake fluid and bad coffee, proof I'd worked, not run. She was on the bed, phone glowing like a secret. The second she saw me, she flipped it face down so fast it skidded across the sheets. No, hey, you're home. Just that tight half smile people use when they're praying you didn't see what you saw. I stood there, dirty boots on the carpet we picked together, thinking how strange it is. How love doesn't end with a scream. It ends with a click. The sound of a phone hitting cotton. I didn't ask who. I didn't need to, because when trust dies, you don't hear a gunshot. You hear silence. And that silence, it follows you to bed, sits in the passenger seat, and whispers every time you start the engine, "What if you're right?" That night, I stopped fixing cars and started fixing the story. I clocked out with grease on my knuckles and the kind of quiet you earn after a long day. The bay door hummed shut, that low metal sound I've heard since I was 19. I drove home the way I always do, same stoplights, same corner store with the tired neon open, same 2 left turns into our subdivision. Inside, I dropped my lunch pail on the counter and ate standing up, cold dinner at the edge of the sink. That's how men eat when they don't want to make a mess or a scene. The house smelled like laundry and lemon cleaner, but not like us. I rinsed the fork, put it back in the wrong drawer, and listened to the refrigerator tick. Out in the garage, the creeper and socket set waited like old friends who never ask questions. Routine is a good blanket, until you notice the draft. I wiped my hands on a shop rag, stepped into the hallway, and realized the house had learned a new kind of silence. Lauren moved through rooms like a commercial, polished, and a little too fast. She answered from across the house instead of from the chair next to mine. Eyes on the lamp, not on me. You learn to clock small changes, the way someone tucks hair behind an ear or doesn't, the way they choose a seat with a wall at their back. She touched her phone more, laughed at things with no sound, and held her breath between my sentences as if words were something to dodge. Maybe it's age or miles or the fact I've fixed too many things that weren't broken yet, but I knew that look. A person drafting a story without you in it. I asked easy questions about dinner and schedules and got answers shaped like smoke. I didn't push. Men my age know that pushing turns a nudge into a shove. I just watched the distance lay down between us like a rug. I tried small talk, the kind that keeps a house running. Need the truck tomorrow? You want me to grab propane? She said she was reading, not a book, just a lock screen. The laugh was a half-second late. The smile was the kind you put on for clerks and strangers. I asked what was funny. She shrugged and reached for folded laundry like the laundry had been waiting on her all day. That's the thing about pretending. You forget the order of events. I set my work bag by the dresser and said, "Hey." She floated a "didn't hear you come in," too light, too even. I don't argue with tone anymore. Tone never confesses. I just listened to my own heartbeat and wondered when it had started to sound like a timer. There's a moment when a man decides whether to be curious or careful. I chose careful. I kept my voice easy and my eyes open. 8 years married teaches you to let small things pass. You don't pick a fight with every cloud that darkens the yard. You fix the hinge, you pay the bill, you save your breath for storms that deserve it. So I told myself the oldest lie I own. Small things are just small. I took a shower long enough to steam the mirror and wiped a circle clear with my forearm. In that circle, I looked like a man who'd make peace with anything. I ate leftover chicken standing up, seasoning it with salt and habit. She drifted from room to room like she had somewhere better to be, and I pretended that somewhere included me. That's how you keep a marriage running on fumes. You don't measure the tank. But when I heard the front door click soft and quick, I felt the measurement anyway. The math was simple. I just didn't want to do it yet. When the house goes dark, it tells you who you are. The porch light throws a weak square on the driveway. The ice maker coughs once and sleeps. I sat in the living room with the TV off and listened to tires fade down our street. There's a difference between being alone and being left. I traced it with my thumb on the armrest. Our wedding photo, white dress, dumb grin, a tie I never liked, tilted a little in the hallway like it was tired of standing straight for strangers. I fixed it. You fix what you can. I texted nothing. Called no one. Men my age don't file reports on their own hearts. We take inventory. I checked locks, filled the dog's bowl, and set my alarm for 5 o'clock a.m. The clock glowed a precise truth in blue numbers. Out in the garage, a clean wrench waited on a rag. The first signal wasn't fireworks. It was a half smile aimed at a screen, a thumb moving fast, and that angle people use when they want privacy without a door. She said, "Brunch with the girls," with her eyes somewhere else. I've replaced enough timing belts to know when a rhythm is off. Later, I saw a photo on a friend's page. Rooftop lights, city in the background, 4 glasses sweating like they'd been laughing. Lauren wasn't in the frame, or she'd learned how not to be. People do that when they're trying to keep 2 lives from colliding. I gave her the grace I would give a stranger. Maybe the angle was bad, maybe the moment didn't include her. But grace isn't blindness. It's a ledger. You write down what you see and wait for the totals to make sense. I've always believed one odd beat doesn't make a song. You don't tear down a house over a loose board. So I said the reasonable things men say when they still want their life. She's tired. I'm touchy. It's a phase. I told myself to be a gentleman about it. Polite questions, no sarcasm, no late-night lectures. That's an honorable plan until honor becomes an alibi. I kept busy. Wiped the counter, checked the calendar, folded a towel too neatly, and wondered when I started treating marriage like a checklist. Outside, a car door thudded somewhere on the block. I listened the way a man listens when hope has turned into monitoring. It's not love's best uniform, but it fits when you need pockets. Middle-aged men are experts at control, budgets, schedules, torque specs, cholesterol numbers. We like problems that tighten at 40 foot-pounds and stay tight. But people aren't head bolts, and love doesn't care about your spreadsheet. I walked the hallway, straightened a rug, and called it progress. I told myself that showing restraint was leadership. Maybe it was. Or maybe I just didn't want to find what I'd have to act on. That's the real trick at our age. You can manage everything except the thing that asks you to change. I made a deal with myself. 1 more week of grace. 1 more week of believing small things stay small. Then I heard the door click again, soft as a secret, and I knew the week had started without me. Men who work with tools look for evidence in simple places. I stood by the front window and watched taillights smear down the street, red sliding into black. That was the answer I didn't want in a language I couldn't misread. I tried to remember the last time we laughed in this house without checking a clock. I failed. The dog settled by the map of sunlight on the floor and sighed like he was tired of being the only thing that stayed. I held the curtain edge, felt the stitch in the fabric, and thought about the difference between dignity and pride. Dignity sits down. Pride storms out. I sat. I stayed. I let the taillights vanish and told myself sitting was strength. If I'd known where that first night was headed, I wouldn't have showered. I wouldn't have set the alarm or wiped the counter. I would have gone back to the garage, slid under the truck, and slept on the creeper with a cold socket for a pillow. Tools don't lie. They don't promise brunch and come home at 3. But I didn't know yet. Not enough to move. Not enough to speak the kind of sentence that rearranges a life. So I did what men do when they're deciding if they're brave. I waited for proof and called it wisdom. In the morning, I'd still be the same man in the same house with the same doubts. And one new rule forming in the quiet. Saturday mornings used to be simple. Cast iron on medium, bacon laid out like shingles, coffee drip steady, the house waking up slow. I liked the rhythm because it didn't ask me for anything except patience. That morning, I set 2 mugs, cracked eggs into a bowl, and listened to the bacon do its dance. Lauren walked in wearing a sweatshirt that wasn't mine. Gray, too big at the shoulders, too short at the sleeves. I noticed it the way a mechanic notices a new rattle. Not dramatic, just data. She scrolled her phone with her thumb while leaning against the island, half present, half somewhere else. "You want eggs?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral, the way you talk to a customer who swears the engine fixed itself. "Maybe later," she said without looking up. "Brunch with the girls." I nodded. That used to mean something warm. A table we knew, a photo she'd show me later. Lately, it meant an empty house and questions I wasn't invited to ask. The bacon popped, and a fleck hit my wrist, sharp enough to make me flinch. She smiled at something on her screen, then sighed like my kitchen was the problem. I set a plate on the counter for her, even though I knew it would sit and cool. Older men know this feeling. Serving a meal to prove to yourself you're still a husband. The sweatshirt scraped my nerves more than I wanted to admit. Not jealous. Just alert. We stood there like co-workers waiting on different elevators. Bacon, coffee, silence. I looked at the clock and decided I was done pretending breakfast could cover for everything dinner couldn't. I didn't have a speech prepared, only a line in my head I'd been circling for a week. I kept my back to the stove so the bacon wouldn't burn while I said it. New rule, I told her, gentle but solid, like setting a torque spec. If you're out past 10, send me your ETA. If you can't, I'm turning in and locking up. No drama, just clarity. She finally looked up. The expression was something between amusement and offense. You're locking me out now? She asked like I'd suggested boarding the windows. I shook my head. I'm locking the house. I'm up at 5. I'm not waiting until 2 listening for footsteps. She made a face people make when they're deciding if they can paint security as control. So romantic, she said. Romance starts with respect, I answered, sliding the bacon onto a plate. We can work on flowers later. I kept my tone steady so it wouldn't turn into an argument about tone. Men my age learn that volume is a tax. You pay it immediately and you pay it again later. She tapped her phone, thumb quick, eyes bored. I'm not a teenager, she said. I didn't say you were, I told her, meeting her eyes. I'm stating how the house runs. She shrugged, like I'd just changed the channel without asking. It stung, not because I wanted permission, but because I didn't want to be the only adult in the room. The eggs finished, the bacon cooled, and I realized rules aren't romance killers. They're the fence that lets the garden grow. She took a strip of bacon with 2 fingers and walked down the hall. I stared at the plate she left behind, already hearing the pushback I knew would arrive. But a rule is a rule because it survives the first eye roll, and the second. She came back 10 minutes later with lip balm and the same sweatshirt, keys in hand, jaw set. So, we're doing rules now, she said, like I'd thrown a penalty flag after the play. We are, I said. We always had them. I'm just naming one out loud. She leaned on the island, chin high. I don't need a curfew. I took a breath and let it out slow. Curfews are for kids. This is a courtesy. If you're out late, tell me when you'll be home. If you don't, I go to bed and lock up. She squinted. You're locking me out. I shook my head. I'm locking the house. That's a sentence older men understand. Safety isn't a mood. It's a latch that works. She laughed, a little too bright. Wow, super romantic. I nodded toward the plate. Romance starts with respect. We'll handle flowers later. For a second, I thought I saw a flash of the person I married, the one who cared about how the other half of the house felt. Then her face closed. Whatever, she said and turned her back. I heard the door open and close, the sound of her leaving, sliding under the bacon smell like a bad commercial. I rinsed the pan and stared at the detergent bubble that outlasted the running water. Controlling? No. Controlling is monitoring. Clarity is declaring. Men who've paid a mortgage know the difference. I dried my hands, wiped the counter, and put the pan back where it lives. If she needed a villain, I'd already been cast. Still, there's a difference between being called controlling and being irresponsible with your own sleep. I chose the door that would let me wake up sober about my life. I've bought flowers after arguments, and I've bought flowers before them. They smell the same either way. Respect doesn't. You can't fake its weight in a room. You can't spray it on and hope nobody smells the truth underneath. I thought about the early years, cheap dates, shared fries, dancing in the kitchen, to a song we both pretended to know the words to. Back then, we mixed up whose jacket belonged to whom because we kept borrowing each other's warmth. These days, warmth felt like something I paid for in utilities, while connection got kicked down the road. Romance starts with respect, I'd said. I meant it. Respect is texting an ETA because you care if someone sleeps well. It's saying, I'll be late, and letting that sentence be a bridge, not a shield. A lot of men in my age group learn this the hard way. When you skip respect, you don't get spontaneity, you get suspicion. I poured coffee in the quiet and admitted something I didn't want to admit. Hoping she might be different tomorrow was a strategy, not a solution. Strategies stall, systems move. Respect is a system. If that makes me dull, then dull keeps houses standing during storms. I sipped, tasted the bitterness I'd come to expect in my cup and my day, and put the mug down without clanging it on the counter. Nobody likes noise when they're balancing glass. She left with a breezy, "Don't wait up," air kissing the kitchen like it was an audience. The door shut soft, which I've learned can be louder than a slam. I rinsed the pan, letting the hot water run until the steam trimmed my thoughts. The window above the sink caught the backyard in a dull mirror. Patio chairs, a grill cover lifting at the corner, the neighbor's maple throwing a patient shadow. I could see myself in the glass, shoulders set the way men set them when there's work to do and no applause coming. There's a kind of dignity in clean dishes. It says, I did my part, even if nobody pins a ribbon on you for it. I stacked plates, wiped the oil splatter, and pulled the trash bag just enough to tie it later. When I switched off the kitchen light, I caught my reflection again, just a blink. The room behind me going dark the way the house had been dimming for weeks. I dried my hands, flicked off the sink, and listened to the quiet. Quiet can be mercy. It can also be a trap. Tonight, it felt like both. I checked the locks, not because I was angry, but because I sleep better when the world has clear edges. Then I sat at the table with my phone face up, not hunting for ghosts, just staying honest about the time. Around 6, a ping. Running late. Don't wait. No where, no when, no who. It read like a receipt without the total. I typed ETA and watched the bubbles appear and vanish twice. Nothing after that. I set the phone down and made a sandwich I wasn't hungry for. Men who work with their hands understand this. Sometimes you eat because not eating makes the house sound bigger. I turned on the game, muted because commentary felt like an accusation. At 9, nothing. At 11, the same. The dog lifted his head twice to check the door and then decided I wasn't interesting. I stretched my back the way guys in their 40s and 50s do. Slow, careful, bargaining with whatever muscle had a complaint. Midnight made the living room look like a waiting room. The rule was clear. The response wasn't. I turned the deadbolt, felt the click, and told myself clarity beats curiosity when you have to wake up at 5. I placed my phone on the nightstand, face up again, because honesty goes both ways. If she walked in at 2, I wasn't going to ask questions. I'd already asked the only one that mattered. Are we a team or a schedule conflict? At 1 in the morning, the house breathed like a sleeping person, slow, steady, honest. I lay on my side, earplugs in the drawer, not in my ears. On principle, not paranoia. The dog thumped his tail once, that soft drum you hear when someone comes home late and tries to be cute about it. I stared at the ceiling, counting the seconds between sounds because that's what men count when there's nothing left to argue. A car door shut, keys fumbled, the handle turned, and the deadbolt said what I'd already said. Not tonight. There was a pause, 2 beats, then 3. Then the spare key in the top drawer of the console did what spares do. The door opened, no apology attached. Shoes off, a quiet tiptoe, the bathroom light for exactly 30 seconds. Then the long, low hush of someone rehearsed in entering a life like a thief. The dog lifted his head again, decided there were no treats, and flopped back down. I rolled to my back and let the emptiness of the moment be what it was. If you've ever slept in a house where respect is off its hinge, you know that the heaviest part of night isn't the dark, it's the guessing. Morning smelled like coffee and something sweet I didn't buy. A candle burned on the kitchen island, vanilla or bakery, and a note leaned against it in neat handwriting. Sorry, fun ran long. Brunch rain check. Fun ran long is a sentence that fits on frosting. It doesn't fit in a marriage. I picked up the note, turned it over, looked for the thing older men look for, the sign that an adult wrote it. There wasn't one. The candle felt like a stage prop, useful for setting a mood, terrible at telling the truth. I poured 2 mugs out of habit and drank both because habit keeps the hands busy while the head decides if it wants to work today. I thought about all the times I had been late and how I'd announced it. Calls, details, a plan to make it right. Not perfection, just respect. The house was bright in that way early houses are. Sunlight on a floor that needs sweeping. A clean sink. A list of chores you choose because you can control them. I blew out the candle, watched the smoke thread the air, and let the last curl vanish. That's how some apologies feel, visible, then gone, leaving a hint that never feeds you. I sat at the table with a legal pad and wrote 2 columns, feelings on the left, facts on the right. Feelings, tired, ignored, edged out of my own life. Facts, out late without times, phone face down, sweatshirt not mine. A rule met with sarcasm, candle, and note instead of conversation. I'm a systems man. Men like me get accused of being cold when we're just trying to stop the bleeding. Feelings are real, they just don't make good maps. Facts do. I marked what I could control, my sleep, my money, my door, what I could request, an ETA, a conversation longer than a meme, a partner, not a roommate. Then I drew a line under the list and wrote one sentence. Respect is a system. I pictured myself explaining it to another man my age over a grill or an open hood. He'd nod, because we both know that love without practices is a hobby, and hobbies get shelved when life gets loud. I finished my coffee and decided the day would move the way my list moved, steadily, without apology. That decision didn't fix anything. It just put air in the tires so I could steer. I was tightening a loose cabinet pull when my phone lit up. Sorry about last night. I'll text. I'll be better about scheduling. The words were neat, polite, almost corporate. I didn't feel relief. I felt a mechanic's calm when a customer finally admits the noise is real. Thanks, I typed. Appreciate clarity. Then I put the phone face down, not to hide, but to prove a point to myself. Monitoring is not the same as leading. Men my age have seen this play before. The softening move. You've probably lived it at work or at home. The quick apology, the promise of structure, the smile that says, "We're good, right?" I wanted to be good. I also wanted to stop negotiating with smoke. I wiped the counter clean, set the screwdriver back where it belongs, and let the house be quiet on purpose. That's when it clicked. The note, the apology, the candle, the text, all softness with no spine. Textbook, I said out loud, not mocking, just naming it. The second I did, I felt less crazy. Softness isn't the same as change, and the only thing I could actually change today was me. I set my coffee down, looked Lauren in the eye, and said it plain. Joint account becomes bills only. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, those stay. Everything else is separate. Your card, my card. Discretionary spending doesn't live in our shared wallet anymore. My voice didn't have heat in it. It had structure. That matters to men my age. We've learned that speeches might feel good, but statements build walls you can lean on when the wind kicks up. She stared back like I'd just changed the rules in the fourth quarter. Maybe I had, but in marriage, the scoreboard is respect, not romance. I explained the numbers the way I'd explain a brake job. Transparent, predictable, no upcharges. I'm not punishing you, I added. I'm protecting peace. I could hear my own father in that line. An older wisdom that knows money is the quiet river running under every house. You manage it, or it floods you in your sleep. My decision wasn't anger. It was sandbags. Lauren cocked her head and called it passive-aggressive, like the phrase was a card she could play to win back ground. I shook mine and answered, no. It's assertive. Men my age know the difference. Passive is silence that hopes. Aggressive is noise that hurts. Assertive is drawing a line you're willing to stand on next week and next year. I laid out the schedule, auto-draft dates, statement alerts, caps on recurring charges, because systems don't argue and feelings do. She tried on a few expressions. Offended, amused, indifferent. None of them fit. So you don't trust me? She asked. I trust what people show me, I said. Show me well. It landed like a wrench on concrete. Solid, a little loud, impossible to ignore. Older men understand that dignity often sounds like paperwork. You want to save a marriage? Start with the parts that can be measured, then see what the heart can carry. I didn't raise my tone. I raised the standard. Her shoulders softened just a shade, like a singer dropping half a note to seem human. I hear you, she said, a phrase that floats and never lands when it wants credit for nothing. She added the smile that had closed 1,000 small arguments. I let it pass through me like weather. Good, I said. Hearing is free. Following costs attention. She laughed, a little sound with edges on it. You always make it sound like a checklist. Because life breaks when you skip steps, I replied. In my head, I pictured torque specs in the way a bolt fails if you over-tighten it trying to force peace. I told her I'd swing by the bank Monday morning when the doors opened. No drama, just a plan. She nodded like we were finishing a meeting. For a moment, the room felt lighter. But experience has a long memory. The first "I hear you" is often the first illusion. Weather clears before it storms. Men who've lived some years can sense the difference between change and choreography. The next day, Lauren made breakfast and slid a handwritten note into my lunch. Proud of you? A younger version of me would have melted. This one took the warmth, thanked it, and kept the receipts. I noticed the phone placed just out of reach, screen down but within Grace's line of sight. That's what illusions do. They mimic the shape of honesty, but not the weight. I didn't punish it. I measured it. Let's match words to the calendar, I said. This week, we're clear about plans and return times. She agreed easily. Too easily. Like a store greeter saying, "Have a nice day," while counting the minutes to clock out. I wanted to believe. I did. But belief isn't strategy. I put systems, not speeches, at the top of a sticky note on my dashboard. If change was real, it would not require a spotlight. It would walk in daylight. Thursday looked like Tuesday in different weather. She drifted back to old rhythms, brunch stretching into evening, replies that dodge specifics, the kind of laughter you hear from a room away and wish you didn't. I kept my hands busy at the shop because older men know work can be prayer, steady, useful, honest. Around 6, I got the text. Running late, don't wait. No location, no plan. A sentence like an empty wallet. I reread it and felt nothing dramatic, just clarity settling like dust after a door slams. I tuned the radio off and tightened another belt that hadn't failed, but would if ignored. That's the thing about maintenance. You don't wait for the squeal to become a snap. Home that night, I put the phone on the counter face up. A small sermon to no one. The dog circled twice and slept. The fridge hummed. In the quiet, I decided that if the past repeats itself, so will I. Only this time, with a backbone. Monday morning, I parked outside the branch before the lights fully warmed up. Older habits made it easy. Ledger in my head, documents in the folder, calm in the veins. When the doors opened, I was the kind of polite that makes clerks helpful. I want our joint account to handle bills only, I said. Mortgage, utilities, insurance remain. Everything else routes to separate accounts. Paper shuffled, keys clicked, the kind of music I've learned to trust. The manager explained alerts and limits. I listened like I was learning a new torque pattern. Systems don't love you back, but they don't lie either. I signed where the tabs told me to sign. When I stepped into daylight, I felt something older than victory. Stability. I snapped a photo of the new setup and filed it where footage lives that you hope you never need. Then I went to work. You don't announce responsibility. You just show up and let the receipts do the talking. Tyler rolled a stack of tires past my bay, grinning like a man who prefers noise to tension. "You look like a guy who moved beans on a spreadsheet," he said. I smirked. "Everything good?" he asked, not fishing, just friendly. Men like us don't write diaries. We leave hints in the way we wipe a wrench. "Communication's a war zone," he said, half joking. "Not anymore," I answered. "It's a toll road now." He laughed, then stopped when he saw I wasn't laughing. "Boundaries?" he asked. "Systems," I said. He nodded the way men do when they understand without agreeing. "You need a night out?" "I need a morning that isn't 3 a.m., I said. He got that. Most men our age do. He wheeled the tires away and left the right kind of silence, the kind that doesn't hide, the kind that lets you breathe. I tightened a bolt a quarter turn and felt the thread seat clean. Right is right. At 5, Lauren called with sugar in her voice, the kind that makes promises on credit. "About the bank thing," she began. "It's done," I said. "That was fast." "Clarity's faster than drama," I replied. She agreed too quickly and then pivoted. "How about a couples game night on Friday?" Reaching for control by scheduling my time like it was hers to spend. I reminded her I work Saturdays. "We can make it quick," she said. Or, I offered, "we do a Sunday afternoon barbecue instead." That stopped her. The calendar doesn't bend so easily when it can't hide. She took a breath. "Sunday then." "Great," I said. "You handle invites. I'll handle the grill. We'll be clear on start and end." She tried on a brighter tone. "We're good, right?" "We will be," I said, "if words match actions." On my end, the line stayed quiet. On hers, I could hear thinking. Sugar melts fast when heat shows up. The rest of the week read like a contract you don't sign without a pen. Lauren texted cheerful updates, careful timestamps, photos cropped to show everything except the one thing that matters: context. I treated each message like a receipt, noted, saved, set aside. When she brought up Sunday again, I repeated the terms: daytime, clear start, clear end, courtesy check-ins. Not romantic poetry, just grown-up language. Men in my bracket know the relief of friction that finally has rules. You can't fix a motor by complimenting it. You fix it by torquing to spec. Friday night, I prepped the grill. iced the cooler, and wrote out a short list: plates, napkins, sauces, because small order defeats big chaos. If this was going to work, it would be on paper first, then in practice. I slept hard that night, not because everything was perfect, but because I'd finally given peace a structure that could hold weight. Sunday's sun came honest across the yard. Tyler showed with potato salad, Mrs. Alvarez with foil-covered kindness that smelled like home. Lauren floated, bright and busy, testing the air like weather does before it decides. She glanced at me, then at the guests, calculating. "We're good, right?" she asked, voice sweet enough to pass for normal. I set a platter of chicken on the table and met her eyes. "We're good," I said, "when words match actions." It wasn't a threat. It was a level placed on a shelf to show what straight looks like. She held my stare a second longer than usual, then turned to laugh at something no one said. I flipped the next batch and felt the heat steady under my hands. Predictable, contained, exactly how I like fire. In my chest, a matching steadiness. I had a system now. If the day stayed honest, we'd be fine. If it didn't, the receipts would. That was enough. Sunday smelled like charcoal, cut grass, and something trying to pass for normal. I dragged the grill to the sweet spot where the breeze carries smoke across the yard, but not into the house. Kids biked past the driveway like the world was simple again. Mrs. Alvarez showed up with foil-wrapped magic and 2 grandkids who treated my dog like a celebrity. Tyler brought a story about a stubborn alternator and a potato salad that always disappears. I wanted the noise, the casual jokes, the sun on plastic cups, the old American afternoon that makes you forget what you know. Lauren floated between groups, louder than usual, eyes always scanning like a host in a restaurant that wasn't hers. For a few minutes, I let the sizzle and chatter drown out the math. The coals glowed right, chicken skin crisping, and I told myself this is what staying married sounds like. Ordinary, busy, harmless. Then she raised her voice. The patio filled into a half moon, Tyler leaning on the rail, Mrs. Alvarez claiming the chair with the best shade, her grandkids orbiting the dog. Casey arrived last, quiet, steady, the kind of friend who sees more than she says. She hugged Lauren a second too long, and Lauren squeezed back like she needed witnesses. I plated drumsticks, laid out buns, and tried to land the party in neutral. Tyler cracked a joke about budgets, and Mrs. Alvarez followed with a story about a customer who swore his engine misfired only on full moons. The group laughed. I did too. That's the thing about middle age. We are fluent in distraction. But the circle had a center, and it was moving toward me. Lauren took the open space like a microphone, drink in hand, smile too bright. I felt that old shop instinct. Tighten what's loose, quiet what rattles, right before the noise spikes. "You know what Jack did this week?" Lauren announced, chin lifted like a game show host. "He turned our account into a monastery." A few chuckles, nervous, polite. I kept my eyes on the grill and flipped a thigh that didn't need flipping. I could feel the heat on my knuckles and the weight of every eye except hers. She looked past me, not at me, as if the line worked better without a face attached. The thing about public digs is their invitations to a fight dressed as humor. I've worked too many shop counters to miss the trick. I set down the tongs and wiped my hands on a towel that wasn't dirty. Older men know, the first person to raise their voice usually loses. I didn't plan to raise mine. I planned to aim. The circle waited to see if I'd make it worse or make it real. I turned just enough to meet the crowd, not enough to perform. "It's called budgeting," I said steady. "The house appreciates it." A few nods from the mortgage crowd. Then I added the sentence that had been building for weeks, the one without a tremble. "If I'm not invited to the details, I'm not funding the mysteries." The air thinned. Tyler's smile flattened into respect. Mrs. Alvarez looked relieved someone finally drew a line in chalk. Casey watched Lauren, not me, like she was measuring fallout. Lauren's laugh came late and brittle. You can tell a lot about a person by how they handle a boundary. Some step back, some push. She pushed. I stayed still. That's the whole physics of this kind of moment. One person tests, the other refuses to move, and the audience learns what the house rules actually are. The patio didn't explode. It froze. A couple of clinks from the cooler. A child's laugh from the front yard that didn't belong to our scene at all. I put the chicken on a platter and set it down like evidence. Lauren tried to steer the ship back with a joke that didn't land and a smile that couldn't carry. People chewed slower. Tyler tossed me a look. "You okay?" The kind men trade when they've both stood in this fire. I nodded once. Mrs. Alvarez asked about the seasoning, like a referee mercifully calling time. We shifted into small talk, but the temperature had changed. The afternoon went on, plates emptied, chairs scraped, and every goodbye felt like a verdict. That's the thing about public tests. No one announces the score, but everyone leaves knowing who played honest. When the last guest left, I gathered plates at the sink. Lauren followed, voice low and sharp. "You embarrassed me." I stacked forks like soldiers and kept my eyes on the warm water. "You opened a door," I said. "I walked through." She slammed a sponge hard enough to splash. "You made me look bad." "I don't make looks," I said. "I make dinner." She hated that. Truth with no heat. The kitchen light hummed, the house steady as a truck idling. Facts don't need volume. "You turned our finances into patio talk," she pressed. "No," I said. "You turned our finances into a punchline." I corrected the caption. That was the whole argument, really. Control over narrative. I don't need a narrative. I need receipts. She hated that too. She leaned on the counter, head tilted like a coach about to give a speech. "You're punishing me," she said. "I'm setting boundaries," I answered. If that feels like punishment, check the behavior that hits the boundary. Men in my bracket know the difference. Punishment tries to hurt. Boundaries try to hold. One is about power, the other about peace. She wanted me to apologize for caring where the money went, for asking what time a door opens and closes in the house I pay for and live in. I didn't apologize. Respect doesn't grow in apologies that fix nothing. I dried my hands, turned off the sink, and stepped aside so she could feel how solid a line is when you stop painting it with chalk and start carving it into wood. "You're not fun anymore," she said, like that was the verdict that should end me. I almost laughed. "I'm not a theme park," I replied. "I'm your husband." Or I was. The words landed between us like a tool dropped on concrete. Sharp, undeniable. Fun is great for Saturday nights. It's useless for Sunday mornings with bills on the table. Men learn this the hard way. Every party has a Monday attached. She stared like she didn't recognize the man who once said yes to everything. That man had clocked out. The person standing here believed in fences, not fireworks. We washed the last dish in silence that didn't apologize. Somewhere outside, a sprinkler started its slow rotation. The house felt awake in a new way, like it had finally picked a side. Next morning, I found a sticky note by the coffee maker. "Proud of you," she'd brewed, packed a lunch, moved like a woman who wanted credit for effort. I let the coffee drip, watched the dark line rise in the pot, and read the note twice. Some men cave to gestures. I've been that man. I know the sugar rush of a pretty apology, but sweetness doesn't repair walls. I put the note in a drawer with takeout menus and warranties. "Thanks," I said when she appeared, because manners aren't casualties here. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and told me dinner was on her tonight. "Good," I said. "Don't mistake that for trust. Call it courtesy to the effort." She blinked, surprised by the distance she'd built and I'd measured. We went to bed at the same time for the first time in weeks. She slid her phone into the junk drawer with a flourish, like a magician showing empty hands. We turned out the lights. The house exhaled. At 1 a.m., the drawer chimed. Once, twice, 3 times. She didn't move. "Who needs you at 1 in the morning?" I asked the ceiling. "No one," she said, too quick. I didn't answer. Some sounds you don't debate. You just file. In the dark, a plan started forming. Not a speech, not a scene, a system. Public tests teach you 2 things: who you are under a spotlight and who they are when the crowd goes home. The crowd was gone. The lights were off. The truth had perfect timing. The call came when the house was pretending to sleep. Casey's name lit my phone and stalled my breath. I stepped onto the porch, boards cool under my feet, the neighborhood humming that late-night electricity older men know too well. "Jack," she said, voice tight, "I can't hold it anymore." No small talk, no careful greeting, just a dam breaking. I leaned against the post like it might steady something inside me. "Make it straight," I told her. "When truth knocks at that hour, you don't offer it tea." She inhaled like she was about to jump. "She's not with the girls every time." Wind touched the chimes, one soft note. I didn't speak. She filled the silence. "I tried to stay out. I can't watch you stand in the dark." My chest didn't pound. It settled. That's what happens when a hunch finds its shoes. I didn't ask for names. I didn't ask for details. I asked for proof, because men my age don't argue with stories. We read the receipts. Last weekend, Casey said, words quick and guilty, I took pictures. She hated herself for it. You could hear it. But guilt isn't always a verdict. Sometimes it's just evidence arriving by a decent person's hand. I stared at the road, empty, lit in a way that makes you think about all the times you ignored the obvious because it wore familiar shoes. Rooftop bar, she added. You weren't in the frame. Neither was the truth, not until she lifted it out of the dark. I didn't want to, she said. I did anyway. I said nothing for a full breath. It wasn't cruelty, it was calibration. Men in my bracket don't sprint to conclusions. We walk there with our heads up. Your call, I said finally, voice even. Send what you think you need to send. The words tasted like metal. I braced for impact, not drama. A life can change from one ping. I waited for mine. The ping came, then another. 2 images sat in the message window like they'd been waiting for me longer than either of us knew. I didn't zoom. I didn't squint. I looked once. Slow. Like a mechanic checking the final torque. Rooftop string lights. A man whose shirt tried too hard. Her face turned toward him in a way that said there was nothing left in my direction she wanted to see. His hand at her hip, hers on his jacket, the posture between friendship and commitment that adults use when they're hoping the world learned to mind its business. 2 photos, I texted back to Casey. No captions needed. She wrote, I'm sorry. Thank you, I answered. I appreciate clarity. And I did. Clarity doesn't scream, it points. I felt no rush to rage, no thirst to interrogate. My hands didn't shake. My future just organized. I closed the door behind me like I was leaving a church that no longer preached to me. No speeches, no demands. I went to the place where feelings don't get to argue, where pens and procedures stand guard. Paperwork exists for a reason. I signed what a calm man signs when his house stops being a home and starts being a ledger. Questions came, dates, accounts, next steps. I answered like I was ordering parts for a rebuild. The clerk slid forms across the desk, and each stamp sounded like a valve clicking into place. In the parking lot, the sun felt honest. That's how you know you did the right thing. The weather doesn't change, but the air finally stops lying. I drove to the hardware store, aisles of solutions, picked up door hardware and a stack of boxes. Not revenge, logistics. People think endings are explosions. Sometimes they're just receipts in a cart with a wobbly wheel. Home again, I carried the boxes down the hallway and set them on the bed. My bed now, even if the paperwork hadn't caught up. I opened the closet and started with the left side because that's how I do everything. Left to right, light to heavy. I folded carefully, not tenderly. That's an important difference. Tender is hope. Careful is hygiene. I stacked sweaters in neat lines so I wouldn't have to touch them twice. The smell of her perfume climbed out of the fabric like a memory that didn't pay rent. I let the window breathe. By the 3rd box, my mind felt cleaner than my hands. I taped tops, wrote bedroom, bath, desk with a black marker that didn't shake. It wasn't punishment. It was respect for the version of me who would have to carry these down the steps. Men in their 50s learn that kindness to yourself is sometimes just good packing. At 7, my phone lit the counter. Dinner with girls, no place, no time. A courtesy wrapped around an omission. I didn't respond. At 9, back late. I set do not disturb like a man clocking out of overtime he wasn't paid for anyway. One thing men my age learn, silence isn't cruelty when it replaces arguments that never meant to tell the truth. I tightened the last strip of tape and slid a frame, our wedding, into bubble wrap with a care that felt like closing a chapter without tearing the page. In the morning, a different message arrived with the bravado of a magician's flourish. Traveling for a few days. I'll explain later. Don't worry. I stared until the words stopped working as language. Then I typed the only answer that respected both of us. No problem, honey. Explain it to my attorney. He loves stories. Send. The phone started a new career. Switchboard. Unknown number, her number, sister, her number again. Voicemail stacked like parking tickets on a windshield that wasn't mine to clear. I made coffee, changed the locks, called the utility companies, cut her from emergency contacts at work because emergencies should never dial a ghost. Angie at the front desk gave me that look women give men when they can see the smoke but don't ask about the fire. "You got it, Jack," she said soft, like respect wearing comfortable shoes. Tyler caught me at the soda machine. "You good?" "Efficient," I said. Not a dodge, an accurate label for a day made of steps that all pointed the same direction. Efficiency is how a man says he chose dignity over drama. I went home and slid the suitcases by the door, metal zippers clicking like a metronome for a new life. I finished the last box and set it with the others. The house sounded different, wooden, honest. I wiped the counters, emptied the dishwasher, and put the spare keys in a drawer that didn't lie. People think grief howls. Sometimes it sweeps. I walked room to room, touching the edges of the new arrangement. The closet didn't argue about space. The vanity didn't crowd me with bottles that promised youth. My tools took over the spare room, a workbench where a mirror once told stories I couldn't live up to. A courier dropped a bakery box with a note. "Miss you. Can we reset? Frosting doesn't fix math." I set it on the porch for neighborhood kids and texted Casey. "Cupcakes on my steps if you want one." She wrote back, "She's spiraling." "I'm being silent," I replied. Silence this time was not retreat. It was alignment. The weekend passed in the kind of quiet you have to earn. I changed the oil on the truck, not because it was due, but because order reminds a man he's still in here. Mrs. Alvarez's grandkids tossed a ball in the yard. I tossed it back and sent them home with the last cupcakes because kids shouldn't have to carry adult stories. The porch took the evening light like it had been waiting. I sat with coffee and the kind of book you can read without underlining, and I didn't check the phone. When it buzzed, I let it. Some messages are just rope thrown at a man who learned to swim. Casey texted, "You okay?" I answered, "Better than yesterday." That's what recovery looks like when you're past 30. Not victory laps, just better than yesterday. Monday, clouds low, air heavy. At 11:08, the handle rattled, a familiar rhythm meeting a new lock. Knocking followed. "Jack, my key. Why doesn't—" I opened the door just enough to keep my foot inside and nodded toward the suitcases. On top, a thick manila envelope. Instructions. End of this arrangement. She laughed the way a life jacket laughs at a storm. "This isn't funny." "I agree." She touched the envelope like it might burn. "What is this?" "Paperwork," I said. "And pictures." Her eyes tried to hold two truths at once and dropped both. "Where did you get those?" "They arrived." The hallway held its breath. "It's not what it looks like." "Don't insult both of us." She reached for script, came up empty. "We can talk." "You will," I said. "Explain it to my attorney. He loves stories." The word attorney changed the air. That's the thing about truth with paperwork. It doesn't argue. It proceeds. She came back on a Monday, late morning, the kind of gray sky that makes a house feel heavier than it is. I heard the rattle at the handle first, the sound people make when memory meets a new lock. Then the knocking, then my name through wood and glass. "Jack, my key." "It's not working." I stood in the hallway long enough to let stillness do some talking. When you've lived with chaos, silence becomes a weapon and a shelter. I opened the door just wide enough to keep my foot on the threshold. Lauren stood there with travel hair and hurried eyes, a tote sliding off her shoulder like it didn't want to be a part of the conversation. "What is this?" she demanded, lifting the dead key like evidence. Why won't it fit?" The answer was in her question. Things that don't fit anymore are simply telling the truth. I glanced behind me at the neatly stacked suitcases and the manila envelope waiting on the entry table. Months of doubt, weeks of paperwork, one door with a different sound. That's how an ending announces itself, not with a scream, but with a click that says, "We don't open this way anymore." She leaned in, ready to push. I didn't move. Boundaries hold when the person behind them stands still. I let the door breathe open an inch more and pointed to the first suitcase. "These are yours," I said, voice level. "And this is yours." I set the manila envelope on top where she couldn't miss it. It was heavy in a way only documents and photographs can be. She laughed, sharp and thin. "This isn't funny." "I agree," I said. Her eyes flicked from the lock to the luggage to my face and back again, like there had to be a trick in the room she hadn't spotted. "You can't just change the locks, Cherie." She tried. "You traveled," I answered. "You didn't say where. You told me not to worry. I chose steps over worry." People think endings are made of shouting and tears. Mostly, they're checklists. I'd learned that from years of fixing engines. The right tool, the right order, the right torque. The door stayed half open, invitation and boundary in one. I didn't block her. I didn't argue. I just stood where I said I would. She reached for the envelope like it might be hot. "What is this?" "Instructions," I said. "And the end of this arrangement." The words didn't echo. They landed. She tore the flap with the kind of force you use when you're trying to get past the part you fear. First page, instructions. Pickup time, a neutral place if she preferred it, the list of items boxed by room. Second page, the number for my attorney with a note, all explanations to counsel. Then the photographs, tucked in a clear sleeve, visible enough to stop a lie before it started. She slid the top one out just an inch, saw the rooftop lights and the hand that wasn't mine. The color drained in stages. "It's not what it looks like," she whispered, eyes skipping away from the image like it might burn. I watched the pictures, not her. Photographs are stubborn. They don't argue and they don't embellish. "Don't insult both of us," I said. It wasn't anger. It was housekeeping, taking out the same bag of trash after pretending it didn't smell. She swallowed. "Jack, please." There's a please that asks for grace and a please that asks for amnesia. I was fresh out of both. Behind her, the street hummed its ordinary tune. Inside, the printer-clean scent of paper said the extraordinary part was over. Tears sat in her eyes, balanced like a salesman's smile, there to move a product. "We can fix this," she said, stepping a half-inch over the threshold as if proximity might soften terms. "You don't fix trust with a coupon," I answered, keeping my hand on the edge of the door. "You redeem it with behavior over time. We're out of time." She tried another angle. "Counseling, then. We'll reset. I'll cut off." She stopped herself, hearing the cliff she'd built with her own words. The envelope sat between us like a level, bubble right in the center, showing what steady looks like. "I set a time tomorrow," I said, nodding to the page. "Bring someone with you if you want. We'll finish what we started." She winced at the word finish, like it was a hammer. I didn't raise my voice. I adjusted settings. Older men will know this feeling, the moment you stop arguing and start living by what you wrote down. She reached for the photographs again and stopped short, as if touching them twice would change the story. "You're cold," she said. "I'm clear," I corrected. "That's different." "I made mistakes," she rushed. "Big ones, but you went nuclear. Locks. Lawyers." "No," I said quietly. "I went procedural. There's a difference." She glanced at the suitcases like they'd packed themselves out of spite. "How did we even get here?" she asked, voice thinning to a thread. I let a beat pass. "One small disrespect at a time," I said. "You trained me not to ask. I trained myself to act." She blinked hard, pushed a hand through her hair, and tried on one more tone, the one that used to work. "I'm sorry, honestly. Let me show you." "That's the point," I said. "You've been showing me. I finally believed you." The line hit her shoulders like weight. "Who sent the photos?" "A friend who got tired of standing in the dark." "Casey," she hissed, hurt turning predatory. "Don't do that," I said. "Don't punish the one person who remembered right and wrong." She looked down, jaw set. Behind us, a neighbor's wind chimes picked up in a small breeze. Funny what sounds like peace when you've lived with alarms. "Please, Jack," she tried again, softer now, like the house might overhear and vote with her. "Counseling. 2 sessions. I'll change my number. I'll block." She didn't finish. The sentence had too many exits. "You're asking me to gamble the deed with a promise," I said. "My days of betting on speeches are over." Her eyes flashed. "So that's it? You're perfect? No mistakes?" I shook my head. "I made plenty. I made this one too long." The front hall smelled like cardboard and lemon cleaner. Clean is a smell and a decision. I nodded at the schedule. "Come back at the time listed. Bring help if you want. I won't be here after that." She tried humor, that thin bridge we build when the river's too wide. "You always did love a plan." "I always loved a home," I said. "Plans are how you protect one." For a second, we just breathed the same air and knew it was rented. She reached for the first suitcase, fingers tight around the handle like it might run. The wheels banged down the entry step, heavy in a way that only departure can be. She lifted the envelope to her chest, a life jacket with paperwork inside. "What do you want me to say?" she asked, voice hoarse. "Nothing," I said. Talk to the person who gets paid to translate explanations into exits. It sounded cruel. It wasn't. It was mercy wearing steel. To stop the bleed, not cause it. She stared at the new deadbolt like the old key might still charm it open. Some endings teach gently. Ours taught exactly once. "I'll come tomorrow," she said finally. I nodded. "Use the time to make a list," I said. Lists are honest. For the first time in months, the air in the hall felt breathable. She didn't argue. She didn't bargain. She just turned. I eased the door until wood met wood. No slam, just alignment. Through the glass, I watched her load the second suitcase, the envelope tucked under her arm like a verdict. Wheels on concrete, trunk latch, engine start, the sounds of an old life moving to a new address. My phone buzzed a minute later. Mrs. Alvarez from across the street. "Everything okay?" I typed back, "Everything's in its proper place." The house answered with quiet. No chime, no late return, no performance. I set the spare keys in a small dish and took the first clean breath of the day. People think winning is fireworks. At my age, it's a door that closes on time, a lock that works, a man who finally believes his own rules. I walked to the kitchen, poured coffee, and let the steam rise without a story. Tomorrow there would be logistics. Today there was order. And order, I'd learned, is respect made visible. Peace is underrated until you've been budgeting for it. Now my mornings start with air and motion. Sneakers on pavement, not footsteps on doubt. The shop hums again. Tyler cracks a joke while we rebuild an old truck that's more reliable than most promises. The porch has new coffee mugs, same sunrise. Sometimes Casey stops by. We talk about engines, not heartbreak. The house feels different, not lonely, balanced. Every room speaks the same language now, honesty in full sentences. I used to think strength meant holding on. Turns out, it's knowing when to let go quietly. Respect isn't a speech, it's a system. You don't argue with pictures. You exit. You lock up. You move forward. If you've ever rebuilt from silence, drop a boundaries equals peace in the comments. Because sometimes the loudest victory is the one nobody hears.